welcome back to the Good Leader podcast. I'm Will Van Hart. It's great to have you here as we explore all things church planting, charity and leadership. And I'm delighted today to have my good friend Mark Roper. Mark, welcome to you.
Oh, thanks.
It's great to have you here. Now, Mark, just say a little bit about what you've been doing over the last couple of years.
So over the last few years, we've moved with a team from HTB down in London to plant a sort of resource church, a city centre resource church right in the city centre of Manchester, a church called Fabric Church. It's been a bit of a, as you know, Will, it's been a bit of a adventure. There's a sort of potted history as we were formally invited to start exploring this maybe 4 years ago, and it's been that trying to find a venue that's been the stumbling block for us, which has been one of the biggest adventures, one of the biggest challenges. And in the end, it sort of resulted with us saying, well, we were going to go up, without a venue. And so we did that and we went, and thankfully sort of one came out as part of that process. But it's been the most amazing adventure. So we launched September last year. So we're about 8-9 months in now. We launched in a nightclub, which was not set up at all for church. It was crazy and sticky and messy. They would finish their student night at 4:30 in the morning. We would move in at 7:30. The smell was somehow different every week and equally awful. Febreze and a lot of effort. And we had 4 months doing that. And then we are now in a sort of permanent space, which is an old army barracks just on the edge of the city centre. And it's, it's just a big adventure.
Amazing. Mark, we're talking a lot about resilience on this journey. You've previously been a GP, you were a hospital doctor for a long time in Birmingham, and then you came into ministry training. Then you were one of the leaders here at HCB as well. Your story is packed with kind of resilience and kind of patience. And what I've noticed about you is you're faithful, you're determined, you're patient. How do leaders retain their patience? I mean, in the situation with Manchester, I know there's quite a long build-up, quite a lot of struggle, but you didn't lose connection to your vision. And I think patience is almost one of the unspoken necessities within the world of Christian leadership today. Do you want to say a bit more about how you nurture that?
Nurturing patience. If my wife was here, she would be laughing throughout that entire question because I am terrible at patience, or at least see myself as terrible at patience, and it's not something that I'm particularly good at. I think there's an element to just trusting that. I mean, I have a very high theology of mess. And I think God shows up profoundly in the mess and in the uncertainty. If you read through the biblical narratives of various characters in the Bible, pretty much everybody has a formational season of uncertainty and mess that is a key part of their formational training or their calling, often at the start of their ministry. And so God seems to have some agenda in uncertainty. Like a lot of our story with me switching was never big blinding light moments. It was more non-specific thoughts that then when you moved towards the thing that God wanted you to do, you moved into peace and that sort of thing. And so there's that element of not to the point of carnage or not to the point of burnout or breakdown, but embracing the mess and realizing that there's almost maybe a theology of it, that there's God's in this, and then you don't end up resenting the mess and maybe the God who is in the middle of it. You start embracing it a bit more. If uncertainty and mess is kind of part of the process, it's like mile 8 of a marathon. I've done a couple of marathons terribly at both. But for the first 2 miles, I'm always like, this is great. I am going to smash this. Like, I feel fantastic. And then every single time you get to about mile 8 and you're like, oh, this is awful. I feel terrible. And I've only a quarter of the way through. And then you have this like brain moment when you're like, well, I've never met anybody who's done a marathon who's not said that it's awful. Like, why did I think that I was the special one? Like, mess and uncertainty, and it will be hard. And so there's that element of accepting that, and then also acknowledging that God does the biggest work in preparing you, growing resilience, growing patience during those seasons. So one of the questions that I commonly get asked when I talk about my previous career is why? Why did you do that? What about all that training? And I normally follow it up with I actually, through no boasting at all, because it is silly. I did 2 specialities worth of postgraduate exams in the 2 years before I stopped, because I was still working out what life looked like, and still trying to do. And one of those exams in particular was probably, at least pre-planting, the hardest thing I'd ever done. And if you look at that through human eyes, that's just completely wasted. That's just letters after my name, which mean nothing. But I'm profoundly convinced that me spending 3 months locked in a room, working hard for learning bits about an anesthetic machine and the physics of how it works and how to draw the current diagram of a defibrillator, it was not so that I know those things now. It was building resilience and patience and hope in the darkest times. And so it's realizing that everything counts towards something, I think.
That's a beautiful picture. And I think, in a way, it's so helpful to just think about the complexity, they say the mess. So many leaders that I meet are kind of quite ends driven. They have a vision, if you like, for what they want to happen, and sometimes the process to get there, and lack that flexibility. But your meandering journey intrigues me because you see the bends in the stream as being purposeful, which I think is so helpful. You've also done this alongside being, an amazing dad. I've seen you with your kids, it's sort of great, like a home life that you have. And it doesn't feel to me like you've made many compromises on the things that matter to you. Do you want to say a bit about how do you do that? Like, or maybe you want to say that you do make compromises, but what is it that, like, how do you stack your priorities right when you're under so much pressure to do this big thing?
Yeah, I see. So again, I could give like a really holy answer and make it sound like I'm agreeing with your very kind assessment of my parenting. I feel inadequate most of the time, and it feels messy, and it feels chaotic, and it feels like there are weeks where you feel like I'm, a bang average husband and father and church leader all at the same time. And I think it's maybe not perfectly healthy all the time, but it's good to at least be aware that there's improvement to be done in all those areas. Then I think it's the unknown unknowns, isn't it? If I'm thinking that I'm smashing everything, then actually I'm probably not. I'm burning a load of people along the way by not constantly trying to improve. We have a couple of like really core central tenets as a family that we try and hold. We feel really called to hospitality and know that that's one of the gifts that we have as a couple and as a family. And so we have a relatively open home for both, sort of staff team and the people that we work alongside, which is messy and can be hard because and then work and family sort of have this overlap, which definitely isn't for everybody. We want that to be the same for church, and that's hard in terms of boundaries, but again we're up for the mess of making that work. I think for us as a family, we have two or three rules, but the absolute the sort of the key one for us that we've worked out, or the key two, is one, me and Joe, my wife, need to have a no kids weekend away, long weekend away, somewhere that's a bit of an adventure, just us, like once a year. And then as a family, we need ideally two weeks going on a just us like family adventure. And we, in my more worn out, tired, lacking resilience moments before the holiday, I actually find that I can then dip into like 10 minutes of preparing for the holiday, and that gives me a bit of extra energy for the few weeks before we go away. And then when we come back, we realize that we really needed that as a family. So I think it's those, like, it's not so much escaping, but more investing those times of going away. It's the investing pieces, I think, for us.
One of the areas of ministry which you might not know you've blessed a lot of people is in the area of singleness. And a couple of amazing testimonies have come back to me from single people in kind of midlife who've actually been touched by your and your wife's heart for them, your compassion for them, and actually been taken quite a lot of them away on holiday with you. And obviously that's not on the family holiday, but I find that both very moving and very, very inspiring, and it really kind of hits a kind of chord with me. I'm very passionate about single people in the church. But you're really living that out, and that's having a really amazing impact on people. Can you share a bit more of the vision of that, and how did the Lord speak to you about that area of ministry? And is it something that's organic to you, or is it something that the Lord's really laid directly on your heart?
Wow. I do think it's organic. I do think that's just something that we're passionate about. I think the fact that we find it comparatively easy as a couple and as a family to do like hospitality style ministry. That we know that that's a gift. We know that's been modeled to us by both of our parents, and we know that we carry that, and we know that that's not for everybody. And so this isn't a if everybody did this will work for you, because you do have to unpick stuff around boundaries and stuff, which is hard. So having an open house, having an open family, knowing that people who don't have kids can come around and play with your kids whenever they want to. It's about trying to work out the things that you have control over. So we don't have we can pray, but we don't have control over people's romantic lives. We don't have control over the issue of singleness within the church. We do have profound control over the issue of loneliness in the church. And so we can't pitch for a church where no one's single, if that is the thing that we're hoping for, which you could, again, there's a further discussion there. But we can pitch for a church. We can believe in a church and work towards a church where no one's lonely. And so it's just trying to play our part in that for some, and everybody, again, the challenge is, and this is where, when you go from a church our size to a church of probably some of the other people that you're talking to size, the piece is like, like systems and structures and programs and, all of those sort of things. And unfortunately, like relational ministry is one of the hardest things to scale. Because it's just really, you can't have a program solution to an issue like loneliness. It needs to be relational. And so for us, and it needs to be done on an individual basis as well, because different people have different needs. Some people want to hang out with your kids, and that will be family. And so sometimes that's all together for us as a family. Sometimes people really like coming and babysitting with us, for us, and that brings us life, and we go and have a date night. Some people come away on holiday with us, and that's really important. And also we don't ever do this stuff out of there's a sense of call, but call and charity are like different things as well. We don't do it out of pity or out of some sort of like altruistic sort of like oh, look at us. We completely love people, and they bring huge amounts to our lives as well. There's probably maybe 2 or 3 people when we were in London who really felt like an extended part of our family for a season, and they brought stuff to our family. It wasn't just like come so that we can help you. It's like there is stuff that you really add to our life and our family and our kids and stuff.
Well, it's a beautiful vision. I mean, you can imagine for me, I think this is great. If I could bottle this is very different to a lot of people's assumptions around what a planting ministry would look like.
Yeah.
In terms of that sort of dynamic, growth orientated stuff. But interestingly, that's also happening in your church. You seem to have got the priorities right, that relationship gives way to growth as well. There's sort of almost like relational growth in the church as a byproduct of pastoral investment. You're quite an apostolic leader though too. We've got just a few minutes left. We'll say a little bit about how you see yourself in all of this as a leader, and any advice you'd give to a younger leader who's setting out on kind of planting ministry.
Again, I don't know how great I am at that, but like for us, it's just all about culture. Definitely above strategy, and at least sort of equal with vision. I mean, like vision is, we want to see Manchester, impacted, by Jesus. But I think for us, the way that we do that is, is culture. It's like what is the culture that we're trying to set, that will be appealing, to Christians moving to the city who want to come and join in with what we're doing, and will be appealing to non-Christians who want to come and be like, what is going on here? These people are different. So we just and that comes from the sort of giftings that you sort of have, but also the type of people that you want to be, and it's not easy, but it's easier. The challenge is then living that out at scale. And so it's comparatively easy up to a certain point. And then when you multiply services and when you multiply people and when you have, tiers of leadership, then it gets really difficult. But I think we want to have this staff team and this core team of congregation that are completely get the culture that we're trying to set. And I think there's loads of different bits and bobs, and we've not refined it into really core bits yet. But I think at the heart of that is and I think sometimes there's maybe been a trapping of church in the past that I know that I do as well, if I don't actively guard against it. And just this area around transactional leadership. And it's so easy to, if I know that my absolute thing is that I need to have a full 6-piece band on that stage, and then under every circumstance, in the end, I'm going to start to be transactional with the way that I'm going to make that bass player be there, like 6 weeks in a row, and he might struggle to. That's very, it's just an example, but it's just like, what does it look like for us to maybe soften some of the expectations, so that we can make sure that we bring people along with us, so that we can make sure that we're not asking people to do stuff every week, and people will say yes if we ask them to. And so it's just like, for us, that's something we've held really, really tightly, is what does it look like for us to maybe try and walk before we can run, to not add loads and loads of programs, to focus on building community, but also trying to make people, in the way that we do church. It's, actually the scalable model of church is that the people of God feel fully equipped and ready, and to go fired up on a Sunday, rested on Sunday, so they can go into their place of work and be Jesus in their place of work. Any banging social media or me preaching a good talk is not going to shift the dial of people coming to faith. It's people showing up in their workplace, in their families, in their schools and universities. And so we're just trying to be really careful around culture in particular. And so for a young leader, I think it's just constantly looking at what are the bits of the church where you see life, and not who is the person doing that, because then you attach this, so I've just got to be like them, but like, what is the culture underpinning that, and what are the things that you think, oh, maybe I won't do it like that, and not who's that person or what's that denomination, but like, what's the culture maybe that's going on there that's led to that, and then trying to like distill this thing of like, what are the values that I want to take in.
Mark, that's a really, really great summation of how to lead relationally, and I'm so grateful to you for all of your ministry and what you're doing. I hope you've really enjoyed and felt inspired by this episode of the Good Leader podcast, and I really want to encourage you to kind of press into those ideas of relational leadership and culture setting. I think they're so fundamental and so important, especially in our world today. So have a think about that. We're going to add some notes into the chat beneath the podcast. Hopefully some questions you can apply on your own leader journey. God bless you. Have a really great day. Thanks for being with us here on the Good Leader podcast.